If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans. If we look to the end.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. Welcome to Campaign for America's Tonight in America. There's a lot going on in the United States as we speak. We're going to tackle some of those issues, and I hope to hear from some of you on the chat. I'd like to just read about some of your opinions and some of the thoughts that I have tonight, because what I'm going to say may not sit well with a number of people, but I believe that those of us on social media, those of us who are on network television, broadcast, those of us who are in the political arena and who are leaders of this country must speak out with regard to issues that are very, very important to the American people to help keep this country together. Now, during the past 48, 72 hours, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's husband, was viciously attacked and beaten. I was on the news today, a couple of news broadcasts here in America addressing that issue. And my first thought was, and will continue to be, we need to pray for him. We need to pray for her. Despite political differences, when someone becomes the victim of a vicious crime, especially at that age, that's when, like the Bible says, you put the sword down and turn it into a plowshare. Well, that's what we must do. We must do that as Americans. We must do that as Christians and people of the Jewish faith, as civil people. But unfortunately, within the past 72 to 48 hours, other things have happened. And it really bothers me. It bothers me to a point where I'm on the air tonight trying to relate to you my thoughts and then maybe listen and hear some of your thoughts, read about some of your thoughts here. 38 years I was a police officer, and I saw more terror and harm come to people than I could have ever imagined in my lifetime. Victims of robberies, of assaults, of beatings, of rape, child abuse, even those who have been killed. It's not a pretty sight to see someone suffer as a result of a criminal element. I remember back in the 1990s, I was involved in a shooting where a criminal suspect was running down a street. It was a street gun battle. And I remember thinking to myself, what if this guy gets into a house? What if he breaks into a house? It was 7 o'clock in the morning. Some kids were ready to go to school. What if he gets into a house with a gun? Well, it just so happens that as we were running down a street, there was a house where a family on the second floor were screaming bloody murder. Apparently, he was trying to break into the house through the rear door. Well, I thank God that we were able to take care of the situation before that happened. But I got to tell you, folks, when you see or hear the terror, the horror on a person's face who may believe in their heart that their life is going to disappear, or at least their children, their wife, their husband, it's not pretty to see. Well, every time I hear about these victims of crime with regard to the assaults, my memory goes back to that day, and it kind of causes you to pause and think about, well, how are you going to react now on national television? How are you going to react? What are you going to share with people? What are you going to say there, Lieutenant Rogers, with regard to this act regarding the attack on Speaker Pelosi's husband? And what I've said all day, and I'll say tonight, that we need to pray. We need to keep people under the shadow of God's wings, no matter who they are, whether they believe or they don't. But we have that responsibility. But we also have a responsibility to speak out against conspiracy theories, to speak out against false narratives, to speak out against anybody who manufactures information that is simply not true. Now, I'm going to get to the point about a couple of subjects. First, the White House. Tonight, when I was on the air earlier, the White House had the audacity to get behind the White House press secretary, to get behind the podium and turn this into a political scenario. Now, folks, it may be politically motivated, but as I said on the air, I don't know. No one knows. You got to let the investigation be complete. One investigation says it's, or one newscaster saying it's politically motivated. Another says it isn't. The police say it's politically motivated. Another police officer says it isn't, that the man is mentally ill, and on and on and on and on. What that does is add fuel to the fire of conspiracy theorists, fuel to the fire of those who, and some of you are my friends, who go out of their way to do what? To add fuel to the fire of hate. When you and your organizations, no matter who you are publicly telling the people that you're there to promote peace, justice, law and order. Doesn't mean you're a passive standby to watch. We need to speak out against the things that are bad. But you know what's bad? Not only what happened to this individual, and believe me, I would say this about any crime victim. But because he is who he is, and his wife's the Speaker of the House, who I have absolutely no love for when it comes to politics. But when it comes to a point where a human being, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or whatever, is viciously beaten by an animal, the audacity for those organizations out there whom I know and who some I support, to put graphics up, cartoons up, the most unbelievable things up on the internet. To do what? To do what? To promote hate against a certain group, a certain political party, a certain person? Because that's what you're doing. That is exactly what you're doing. And then what really personally bothers me is to use scripture verses in another ad that you have or another posting, trying to promote love and peace. If anybody's tough on crime, I am. If anybody's tough on the Democrat Party in this country and liberals and communists, you know I am. But we here at Campaign for America have survived all this time because we act responsibly. We try to speak civilly. Yes, sometimes with aggressiveness, and sometimes we're tough, and we will continue to do that. But we know that we also have to confirm one other person's testimony. One other person's testimony as we move along in this journey in life. You know who that is? That's Jesus Christ. That's God. And I'm not going to preach a sermon to you. But my point is this. If we're going to stand up and we're going to say we need to follow the 10 Commandments, we need to follow the edicts of Jesus, if we need to follow the Christian faith, doesn't mean we lay down the sword when we need to use it figuratively, meaning our political power and the gifts God has given us to fight the good fight of faith, as we have with the Freedom Convoy in Canada and the people in the United States fighting for freedom. And I'm hearing from people all over this country over the past week. We're going to see if we can expand what we're doing to help them and others. But we've lasted this long because we try our best to act civilly. And boy, I'll tell you, when the chips are down, in this case, because it's the case right now we're talking about, whether it was somebody else in government or whatever, we have to come together as Americans. When does it stop? Because one leader says this, well, everybody's going to follow. Another leader says that, everybody's going to follow. I don't work that way. Absolutely not. The only leader we should be following is God Almighty. And the people he's called and appointed to help lead the people to justice. Because what I'm beginning to see in this country, the United States of America, is it's true that what Ronald Reagan just said, and you saw in a video, we'll never surrender and we'll always fight. But you know what we're doing, folks? My fellow countrymen here in America, we are committing political suicide. We're destroying our country every time we add fuel to the fire of hate, fuel to the fire of division. I'm not talking about what we do politically, especially when we address problems policies that we don't like, that we disagree with. We do that all the time here. But my goodness, does it cause you to pause to think about if that was your father, that was your mother, that was your child? Because it could be tomorrow. It could be tomorrow. Would you like to have a cartoon of your dad or your mom or your kid put up on a newspaper or all over the world, the internet, with some terrible graphic that intimates that your relative was involved with some terrible thing or involved with other issues in their private life? Would you like that? We got to, folks, in this country, we better think about things as we move forward. I really mean that. In all my years in politics, and I've been involved for a long time, I've never seen it like this. And I believe a lot of this is the result. A lot of it's the result of both Republican and Democrats who need to understand that your loud mouths are causing a lot of trouble. You want to go after policy, go ahead. You want to go after the issues that we are all concerned about, go ahead. But when you cheer, because that's what you're doing, when you cheer over an 82-year-old man being beaten in the head with a hammer, that to me is disgusting. And to think that people I know, organizations I support, did just that. I don't get it. That it is very, very important, that we understand that we need to do, and what we are doing is our best here to keep things civil and to keep them within the framework of our Constitution and make sure that we're talking with each other and not each other. I was a little distracted, folks, because I got a notice here that there was a connection problem, but I think we're back on. So if it comes on and off, please forgive me. All right, so let's get to what's going on with the facts regarding Pelosi, and then we'll move on. I like to give facts to people because there's so many conspiracy theorists out there. And as I said and articulated, even the White House is weighing in on blaming the Republicans and the Republicans blaming the Democrats and on and on and on. Listen, I'm sure some of the things that go on, or most of the things that go on in this country regarding criminal acts is a result of the Democrat policies. But in this case, it may be different. So we have to wait and see. All right, so the who, what, when, where, and why of this Pelosi incident. Who, we know who. We know it was Paul Pelosi, the victim. We know this guy Draper was the assailant. When and where, we know, but we don't know why yet. And therein lies the problem. I said earlier that the police need to get out quickly. They did tonight, finally, and articulate the information they have without compromising the investigation. Why? Because it puts an end to conspiracy theories. Why? Because it puts an end to rumor and propaganda and false and manufactured narratives like those that came out of the White House earlier. That's why. So hopefully, they'll come to a conclusion as to what really went on here and then proceed with a prosecution. That's why it's important to get facts, not jump the gun, not jump to the conclusions that many people have, because other people get hurt. We don't want to see that. Now, let's talk about the midterm elections here in America, November 8th. Just 8 days away. The United States of America is going to go on a new course. And it's going to be a course to rebuild this country, to put it back together as a superpower, and to make sure that no nation on earth is going to touch this nation's freedom and liberty, and that the individual rights of the people here will be safe and secure. In order for us to achieve that, we're going to have to take the United States Congress, the United States Senate, and then eventually we're going to take the White House. I am confident, based on everything I've seen. My wife and I have been out on the road. We'll be out on the road this week. In fact, Wednesday night, I'll be speaking to the Asian American Republican Coalition here in New Jersey. Hundreds of Asian Americans will be there. You know, we're going to be talking about freedom and liberty. We're going to be talking about getting the vote out. We cannot underestimate the opposition. We cannot underestimate them. We need to get out. We need to vote. And vote. Please go out and vote. Anybody who tells you don't vote, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time listening to them. Oh, but Lieutenant, you know, election integrity, they're rigging elections, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to, listen, I've said all along, if you want to be anchored to that, I'm not saying if you want to believe it or not, that's your business. But you stay anchored to something, it weighs you down and you do nothing and you're paralyzed. Just remember that. And what makes you think the opposition isn't going to start within the next 8 days spreading that all over the place? Don't vote. Don't go bother. It's rigged. You need to go out and vote. Do your civic duty. And let's take control of our government. Let's get the people back as individuals who will have the government serve them and not vice versa. It looks like we're going to win big governorships, congressional races, and Senate races. It looks like we're going to win big. So we want to hang on to that. Also, folks, with regard to Dr. Anthony Fauci, we all know who he is, right, folks? Well, said it once, say it again, and it looks like what we said here on this broadcast months ago is now becoming a reality. I'll read it to you. A federal judge has ordered Dr. Anthony Fauci and other Biden officials be deposed as part of a lawsuit against the Biden administration, alleging that the government colluded with social media companies to censor free speech related to the coronavirus and other controversial topics. Now, folks, a federal judge ordered this. So this has to be based on probable cause, has to be based on something that was filed that leads the judge to believe that this may very well be factual. I believe it is, based on a lot of accurate information I have received. But the fact of the matter is, we have to wait and see. And now it's going to go before a judge. They're going to be deposed, and the testimony will go before a judge. And hopefully there'll be a public court hearing and indictments, and then hopefully somebody's going to go to jail. because what has gone on with regard to the CDC, Fauci, Biden, the Democrats, has been tragic. Thousands, if not millions of people in this country and others have been affected by the decisions made by some of these characters. Businesses closed down, lost forever, lives lost, senior citizens lost, people couldn't see and bury their own relatives, kids going to school locked up in classrooms with masks on. My. All this went on because of a few people. And now they need to be held accountable. And we should not let this go until they are brought to justice. Every single last one of them. And it's not only here in America, in Canada and other countries, a lot of good people bringing a lot of criminal charges as well as civic lawsuits against these people. And they should be brought to justice. So we're going to be hearing more about that. But what is more interesting than maybe that court itself, those court cases itself, is the fact that they could have possibly been colluding with social media companies to censor free speech related to this, to censor free speech, violation of the Constitution of the United States. What were they hiding? Why would they want to censor free speech? Well, you see, folks, remember what I've always said? They all get caught. Eventually, every single one of them get caught. If Fauci was doing something illegal, unethical, he's going to get caught. Biden, especially Biden, Hunter, and that family, they're all going to get caught. Trudeau in Canada and others, they're all going to get caught. Every single one of them get caught. But we have to do this the right way, the legal way, within the framework of the law, because they've done things outside the law, thinking they would never get caught. Well, their day is coming. Now, folks, listen to this one. Again, Fauci, according to a court order from the United States District Court for the Western District of Louisiana, U.S. District Judge Terry Darity concluded that Fauci's high-profile public comments have made him a key figure in a lawsuit from the Republican Attorney Generals of Louisiana and Missouri, who allege that collusion between the Biden administration and social media companies to censor the COVID-19 related speech that could be damaging to the White House. The judge is saying here that it looks like, or there's enough probable cause to believe that there was collusion, not to protect you, but to protect the White House, not to protect your children, your relatives, your friends from any type of disease, but to protect the White House. Think about that, folks. Politically motivated from the beginning, up and down and all around. And you got the CDC, hopefully they'll be involved. They will be involved in this whole situation when it comes to court hearings. And sadly, and I mean this, I don't want to see anybody get the COVID-19, but the CDC director, we found that again, who took 5 boosters and was diagnosed with COVID-19 3 weeks ago. Well, apparently she brought her boosters up to date because the COVID-19 allegedly went away. And today they found out that she again failed the COVID-19 test. Draw your own conclusions, folks. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where we're going to be fact checked. They already probably got the thing on Facebook where it says COVID-19 facts, go here. The fact is that, in my view, the CDC should be dismantled. It is not an elective body. These are a bunch of scientists that I have no use for. Absolutely no use for. What happened to monkeypox? What happened to the flu? What happened to the common cold? What happened to all of this? What happened to HIV? Where did everything go? It just disappeared. And now maybe they're going to bring some other like conclusion over some other disease that suddenly surfaces. I don't believe them. But you know who I believe? My doctor. You know who I believe? My instinct. So if some other disease surfaces, I am not going to believe the government. I'm not going to believe the CDC. I'll talk to my doctor and make my decision based on what I could learn and know, not from a pencil pusher in Washington, D.C., or a pencil pusher at the CDC, not from a politician, but from a physician, my physician. not the governments. So all this now is coming back to bite them in their rear ends. They thought they pulled the wool over our eyes with all of their nonsense, but they got caught. And hopefully, not only will they have to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in fines, but hopefully somebody's going to jail, because that's where they belong. Now, how about this? People in Canada, America, and other countries want to hear about some of the successes we have here in America with regard to freedom of religion, freedom of liberty. Folks, there are so many that we could list right now that it would take another hour to be on this broadcast. But here's a few important ones that the American people were talking about for a couple of years. In Washington, folks, Washington State, there was a football coach back in 2017 who did what? In 2015, he got on his knees, and during a football game, I guess it was after the game, he got on his knees and he prayed. He prayed to God, thanking the Lord for protecting the individuals, the kids that were on the football team, and he just simply prayed and thanked God for a good day. Well, apparently the school district took exception to that. They fired the guy. They fired him. I guess you could kneel if there's the Black Lives Matter flag flying. You could kneel if you've got the Communist Party flag flying. You can kneel. You can kneel to all that stuff. That's okay. But if you kneel to God, if you kneel in prayer to a sovereign God, it's illegal, unethical. It's not within the bounds of the school district's rules and regulations. But here's what happened. A Washington high school football coach who was fired by the district over post-game prayers must be reinstated to his old job by March 23rd, based on court documents filed today. Joe Kennedy, he was a former football coach at Bremerton High School, was put on leave in 2015 for reciting prayers at midfield following the games. A Washington court ruled in favor of him. He is going to get his job back by March of 2023. And I hope he takes the school board, the superintendent, who's ever in charge over there, whoever made this decision, I hope he takes him to the cleaners. It is a constitutional right to pray. This man did nothing wrong. In fact, the schools district should have embraced him and thanked him. Instead, they fired him. Now they're going to lose their jobs. Those people, I hope, who made this decision to fire him. And hopefully they'll lose a good amount of dollars from their bank account. Here's another win. This was big here in the United States. There was a Christian baker who was really involved in a years-long legal battle when she refused to bake a custom cake for a lesbian wedding in 2017. Now, she didn't want to bake that cake because of her religious beliefs. And there's freedom of religion. And I believe that. You don't believe in something, you're not going to go against something you believe. Wasn't nasty, wasn't mean. From what I'm told, referred the person to maybe another baker, but this is something we can't do because of our religious beliefs. Well, a California court ruled, after all these years, in favor of this Christian baker, upholding her religious freedom. That's a big win. That's a big win. Again, freedom of religion, freedom of religion, freedom of worship. And tonight, as we speak, another Supreme Court decision will be coming down soon. It's being heard now, is on affirmative action, where there are colleges in the United States who do what? Who don't necessarily admit people into college based on their academic achievement, on their grades. They admit them based on race. On race. And this has been going on for years. I was always against affirmative action. I believe it's an insult to the minority community. I believe there are minorities in this country that are as smart as any other person, work very hard as any other person. So why stigmatize them? Why place them in a category where we don't think you can measure up? So because of the color of your skin, you're going to be elevated. That to me, folks, is terrible. Absolutely terrible. But that's liberal policy. That's Democrat policy. And now a group of Asians have brought the case to court, to the Supreme Court, saying they feel that they're being discriminated against as a result of admitting people based on race. And they're right. They're absolutely right. So, of course, there's debate. The Democrats are debating all day about, well, what do we do? How are we going to solve this problem? There has to be some balance here. The balance is you admit people to college based on their academic achievement. It's simple. You make the grade, you go into college. You don't make the grade, you don't go. Of course, what they've done over the years is lower standards. Oh, you used to have a pretty B plus or A. You had to have your grades, your GPA, your grade point average had to be well above 3.5. They've lowered it in some cases to 2.0. Yeah, think about that, folks. Because at the end of the day, think about this. At the end of the day, folks, it's all about money. Remember we talked about that? All about money. These colleges go broke if they can't put students in classrooms. And the way you get students in classrooms is you admit them to college. But how do you get students in classrooms if their parents don't have the money? The government will give them the money, like what Joe Biden tried to do and miserably failed a few weeks ago. Remember the student loan program? Well, the court said it's unconstitutional. It's on hold. It's on hold. You take the incentive of young people to work hard for what they want in life, to make their dreams come true. You've literally taken their dreams from them. Now in 2022, this year, based on what I've seen over the years, you know what? And please don't misinterpret this, but I feel this way to some degree. A college education is not that important. How could I say that? I really believe that now. I think that what's important now are the vocations, the plumbers, the bricklayers, the electricians, the truck drivers, who are, by the way, the truckers. We speak about truckers in Canada a lot. Let's talk about truckers worldwide. They're the backbone and the salvation of our countries. They're transporting everything we have in our house to us. Vocations. What happened to vocations? You're giving Joe Biden, you're giving tuition-free free tuition to students going to college, but what about the kids going to darn vocation schools? Like I tell you, folks, I wasn't the brightest tack when I got out of high school. Wasn't the brightest. Ended up going in the military, but ended up working in the military and then working when I left the military to do what? To earn my way through college. You know how I did it, folks? Went in the military. I got the GI Bill. Became a police officer. There was more and more training programs developed in order for us to pay for our college education. But we had to work for it. Just wasn't handed to us. And I went to work. I worked midnight to 8 and went to school 6 years, not 4. The bright kids did it in 4. Guys like me, I needed 6 years. But the fact of the matter is that I look back and I say, well, where did the college education, where did that diploma get me? I can honestly tell you, not very far without God's help, without the prayers and the guidance of the Holy Spirit, not very far without the help of my parents. We were poor, so I'm not talking about financial help. I'm talking about the help they gave me in the subject matter of respect. Respect of your elders. Respect. Be kind to one another. Be civil to each other. Discriminate against no one. Be good. Things like that. Dad would say, you're going to listen to mom. Mom would say, you're going to listen to dad. Yeah, you're going to be going to your house of worship, church on Sundays, and do some good thing during the day for someone else. I'll never forget my parents saying that. And I still do that today. Put a smile. They used to say, put a smile on somebody's face today and you did God's work. We used to eat together at the same table, at the same time, same place. Go out together as families. I remember a time when in Brooklyn, New York, boy, were we poor. I didn't realize how poor we were until we moved to the country, New Jersey. But the fact of the matter is, I sometimes look back and think, maybe those days weren't too bad. because there was respect of the police. There was respect of teachers. There was respect of mom and dad. I think we turned out pretty good. And I know most of you watching, are thinking the same thing. We turned out pretty good. So that's what we need to do. Maybe to think about those times and say we're going to bring it back. And we will. I think we're in the process of doing that. And with God's help, we will. So another topic here in America has been crime. Mayor Eric Adams in New York continues to say that crime is a perception in New York. It's all in our minds. In other words, what we see, don't believe. Yeah, maybe that guy got thrown off of a subway platform and that woman raped last week. But those are not that's not the norm in New York. Mayor Eric Adams, yeah, he's the mayor of New York. He actually believes that. And then the governor, Hochul, who's the Democrat, she parrots what he says. It's in your mind. The perception of crime in New York is just that, a perception. Well, folks, here's the facts, though. The overall index of crime in New York City increased in August 2022 by 26% compared with August of 2021. 5 of 7 major index crime categories saw increases, driven by a 38% increase in robbery. Is that a perception? It's reality. 34.7% increase in grand larceny, and a 31.1% rise in burglary. Major crimes in New York City. Now, here's the part, folks. Mayor, I wish you were watching. Major crimes in New York City spiked nearly 60%. 60% in February compared with the same month in 2021. What do you think of that, folks? 60%. And climbing. The New York City Police Department tracked increases across every major crime category. The city recorded a 41% increase in overall major crime through the first months of 2022. Could you imagine that? And the mayor of New York is telling us, telling you, telling me, telling those of you who live in New York, it's in your mind. Don't believe it. Today, while I was on a major news network, Mayor Eric Adams, they're showing a speech where he said it's in our mind, but that he deployed more police into the subway system. You need not worry. Well, he did, folks. He did deploy more police into the subway system about 3 months ago. And the first victim of a crime in the subways was a New York City police officer attacked. That actually happened. The Metropolitan Transportation Agency in New York, the MTA, they weighed in and they said, look, we'll help out. We got a solution to a bit of the crime problem in New York. They went out and they hired hundreds, maybe thousands of security personnel. But their orders were, you do nothing. That's right, folks. It's a fact. You're going to watch, you're going to observe. You see someone committing a crime, you're going to call a cop. Could you imagine? So one of the news outlets went into the subway to see exactly how these new crime fighters were addressing the crime problem. And indeed, the news organization filmed criminal acts. And you know what the MTA security personnel did, according to the reports? Nothing. They let them get away. Are you actually going to believe that a security guard, unarmed, is going to go up to someone, even if they're jumping over a turnstile so they don't pay the fare, who may be armed? You think that security guard is going to go up and stop that person? You have to be insane. You have to be insane to take the job to begin with. Armed cops can't handle them. Money, money, money. Here in America, I've always said we have an addiction to money. Our government. We think we could solve every problem on earth with money. Remember Iran? Obama? Money. Millions of dollars on a pallet, cash, in the middle of the night sent to Iran. Remember that one? We'll never forget that one. Money. And it doesn't stop. Because right now, as I'm speaking to you folks, and this is something that I don't think this is out in the press yet. It may be. But we find out today that sometime in June, not in the distant future, not too far ago, that Joe Biden and President Zelensky, we know him, right, of Ukraine, they had an argument. These are the reports, had an argument or almost a shouting match on a telephone call between both of them over what? Money, over U.S. aid to Ukraine. You know, Zelensky ought to quit his job as president of Ukraine and become the Secretary of State of the United States of America, or the Secretary of Treasury, because he's dictating our foreign policy. Last time I said that, I got some heat from some politicians. Well, you know, you shouldn't say that. There's a war going on. There is a war going on. Not our war. Or are you, Mr. and Mrs. Politician, intimating that it is our war? You were careful in your words. You didn't say, well, we have a war going on or we're at war. See, I catch those things, folks. The fact of the matter is that there is a war going on, and it is my belief, not a fact, but my belief it's a proxy war for the United States of America, and that Joe Biden is dragging NATO into this war. Have any of you viewing this broadcast, have any of you viewed this broadcast, if any of you tell me that you've heard any leader in the United States of America, maybe around the world, but this is Tonight in America, so we're going to stick close to home here, in the United States of America, say words or give a speech that lowers the temperature between Ukraine and Russia? Anybody suggesting, let's kind of calm things down like Reagan did, like Tip O'Neill did? Anybody suggesting we should just calm things down? No. We got Zelensky talking about atomic bombs. You got Putin talking about nuclear weapons. You've got Joe Biden threatening to stock the arsenal of nuclear weapons to do what? And then you got Rocket Man just launching the nuclear weapons. He don't care who he hits anymore. Joe Biden last week really, really increased the temperature. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm talking to the Americans tonight, remember I've been telling you over and over and over again to watch this, because this happened right before Vietnam. 50,000 of our young men and women killed in action over a war that was started in Washington, a war gallantly fought by our brave young men and women, but surrendered by those who sat in Washington. Last week, Joe Biden, instead of lowering the temperature, decides, well, we'll show Putin. We're going to scare him to death right now. Joe Biden publicly says that there are 4,700 U.S. troops from the 101st Airborne Division ready to fight. Now, where? He actually said, where? Ukraine. So we have troops deployed somewhere in Europe ready to fight in Ukraine. Well, who are we fighting? Here's the madness of this, folks. And wait till you hear what I'm going to share with you now with regard to how this is going to turn out. Because I said this a long time ago, and we did some research today on the strength of the NATO forces. Wait till you hear this. So anyway, he says 4,700 troops are ready to fight. Who? There are over 100,000 Russian troops in that area. Now, one may argue, yeah, but they're losing the war in Ukraine. They're getting beat here, getting beat there. Well, I don't know, folks. I get the same videos everybody else gets, and I don't know. But I do know this, based on some of the information that you read and you try to study. I shouldn't say I know it. Let's just say I believe this, okay? I believe, based on my knowledge of the former Soviet military and the Russian military, that they're not using their full force of military weight in Ukraine. I don't believe they are. I've heard that maybe they're using 20% of their military power. I've heard that. But I don't believe that they're using the full weight of their military. We cannot forget the fact, and I believe Biden has, since he forgets everything else. You got to wonder what the people around him must be thinking. That Vladimir Putin was the director of the Soviet KGB. This guy's not stupid. And I just wonder, if he's waiting for something. And what he may be waiting for is if a guy like Biden escalates this to a point that he's going to drag NATO into something here, And we're going to regret every single minute that we as a country didn't step up like we used to and try to lower the temperature, settle the dispute, and put an end to it. Like Reagan did. Like prior presidents did. So 4,700 troops. That's great, Joe. That's great. But here's something about this, folks. Do you think Macron from France is going to send French troops into Ukraine to fight the Russians? I don't think so. You think Germany's going to do that? Or Italy? Or any other nation in Europe? Now, Norway, I got this news like 3 hours ago. Norway decides to elevate the threat level of their military, their alert level of their military. They've got them on some high military alert. Why? Oh, because of what's going on in Ukraine. Now, why did they do that? In fact, folks, if they're going to do it, why don't they keep it quiet? Think about what I'm saying. If you're going to take some sort of military maneuvers, or you're going to take a military action, or you're going to increase your alert status, you're going to tell the whole world, including the people you may be fighting? You know, this has been, to me, this war in Ukraine, and I'm going to quote Charles Krauthammer. Remember the great fellow? I met him. He used to work at Fox News. He was the fellow in the wheelchair. He mentioned that the election of 2016 would probably become the longest running TV reality show in America. Charles was wrong. The longest running TV reality show in America is the Russian-Ukraine war. Because that's what it's become. I've never seen a war where you've got congressmen, congresswomen here and there, Republican, Democrat, getting photo ops on a battlefield where there's no fighting. Or sitting with a guy in a t-shirt who's telling us, you will give us what we need to fight this war. That's what he's done, folks. Guy, Zelensky went to the UN and pretty much dictating what the United States should give him. More weapons, more money. France, Macron. The reason why he won't send French troops, and I don't blame him, they're going to freeze to death this winter. Germany, they're going to be hungry to death this winter. The UK, I don't know what's going to happen with them. They got enough problems. You think they're going to send UK troops? And how about Canada? Well, that nut Trudeau, he may do that. He's another Biden. But I'll tell you this. I've always said from day one, if U.S. ground troops are going to be deployed to Ukraine, I shudder to think what will happen here in the United States. Because I saw what happened here in the United States of America when U.S. ground troops ended up in Vietnam. Because for the first time ever in this country during the Vietnam War, and I've said this and I'm going to say it over and over again until the American people, the moms, the dads, you kids that are in college, wake up and understand what may happen here. When you start seeing the little box, you see the corner up here? I don't know if you could see that little corner, okay, up here. All right. A TV broadcast every night, the body count. Killed in action every night. And we don't want to see that again. We could prevent a war. At least we could prevent the United States engaging in a war that, again, I believe does not affect our national security by working within the framework of the law and demanding that our elected officials use their heads. Listen, if our ground troops get committed there, I'll be the first to support them and back them. Don't forget, I wore that uniform. That is a time when, well, we're going to have to do the best we could at home to change course like we did in Vietnam, but no protest against the troops. They're the heroes. The cowards are the ones in Washington. It really bothers me, folks, because I saw this happen. Again, America, wake up. Understand what's happening right here. Get it together. It's the future of your children. You want your kid to graduate high school and die several months later in Ukraine? Look, send them the weapons, send them what we've been doing to a limit, and then that's it. That's it. Now, here's another reason why France, Germany, maybe UK, and other NATO countries will be unable to participate in a ground war against, again, my opinion, based on what I'm going to share with you here. How about this, folks? How about this? The Center for American Progress wrote this report in 2021. It's only a year later. They said that European forces aren't ready to fight with the equipment they have. Analysts from the Center for American Progress, a progressive think tank close to the White House, of all places, wrote in a recent report that the equipment they have, that's Europeans, isn't good enough. Close to the White House, which means guess who has the report? Joe Biden. Guess who has the report? The Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. The report said that after decades of decline, much of Europe's military hardware is in a shocking state of disrepair. Too many of Europe's forces aren't ready to fight. Its fighter jets and helicopters aren't ready to fly, its ships and submarines aren't ready to sail, and its vehicles and tanks aren't ready to roll. And more crucially, for operations far away, Ukraine, folks, Europe lacks capabilities like air refueling for fighter jets, transport aircraft for troops, and high-end reconnaissance and surveillance drones. So guess what, folks? Think about what I just shared with you. They're not ready. They don't have the jets. They don't have the drones. They don't have the ships. They don't have the submarines. But you know what they're depending on? American blood, American hardware, American might, American will. But the problem is, we don't have the hardware like we used to. The problem is, and analysts will tell you that much of our military has been decimated by the Biden administration and the Democrats. So where's this all going? Where on earth is all this going? This is why I believe, and boy, I hope I'm wrong, that the rhetoric with regard to nuclear warfare is increasing. Seems like everybody knows they have nothing left but a nuclear arsenal to fight a war. I hope I'm wrong, because if that's the road they're going down, they're out of their minds. One of the things I am concerned about is Biden deciding to send long-range missiles to Ukraine. And you know what, folks? Those long-range missiles could be long enough to hit Moscow, to hit St. Petersburg. Do you think that might cross Zelensky's mind? They already hit the Black Sea Fleet, the heart of the Russian Navy. Whether they sank one ship or three ships, I don't know. But the world's on edge right now, waiting for Putin's response. I said the second you hit their motherland, it's over, folks. It's going to go to a level we're not going to be able to control. That's why I call this Joe Biden's war. Joe Biden's war. What a tragedy if we all end up fighting that war. For what? Well, anyway, folks, the good news is we're still here. The good news is there's a remnant. The Bible says there's a remnant of people. A remnant of people who are standing for freedom and liberty, who are fighting the good fight of faith. We've been here before, right? We've been here during Vietnam. We've been here during Korea. All of us worldwide been here during World War II, and we made it. We made it because there were good leaders that finally came up and began to bring people who love freedom and liberty together. And I know there are leaders out there, and I know they're going to rise up. They're going to rise up in Canada. You know, I've said it's no coincidence that Canada and the United States are targets of a very evil, sinister political entity. The WEF, I think they've contributed nothing to world peace. I think there's a lot of evil there. I do, and I don't use that word lightly. The World Health Organization, what have they done really? What have they done really to help any of us through these storms regarding? Maybe sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, but it became political. World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control. Everybody's got names and titles. But they're not the ones that are going to have the final say. We, the people of the United States, will have the final say. You, the people of Canada, will have the final say. You, the freedom-loving people of Great Britain, of Germany, of France, of Lithuania, of Australia. I could go right down the list, South Africa, and on and on and on. You will have the final say. Because we will never, ever surrender our freedom and liberty. It's just not going to happen. And we're going to secure it. We're going to keep it safe because we're going to do something that the opposition won't do, can't do, are unable to do, are incapable of doing. We're going to do two things. One, we are going to absolutely, without any doubt, keep our countries and our people in prayer. I've challenged people all over the world. You read that Bible from cover to cover, you're worried about kings and princes and all these powerful pharaohs, all these big shots, trying to control people. That's what it's all about. Even Satan, right? He's alive. He's around. He's well. He tried to control two people in a garden. And look where he ended up, right? That's where they're all going to end up. But got to stay the course. Work within the framework of the law. Use our heads. Use our heads. Use wisdom. Pray for knowledge. Pray for wisdom. Pray for our leaders, the ones that are standing up for freedom and for justice. And as I said all along, folks, we win and they lose. All right, folks, listen, I'll be on the air tomorrow night. If you want to listen to a congressional candidate on the 11th Congressional District here in the United States, I'm going to have him on tomorrow night at 7. We're going to speak for a little while about what his plans are, and I'm going to speak to him about some of the issues that we talked about tonight. And then Wednesday night, I'll be speaking to the Asian American Republican Coalition here in New Jersey. And let's see, Thursday night, we have Tonight in Canada. We got a great guest coming on. I know you're going to love this guy. He's been on before. And then Friday night, I hope I can rest a little because it's going to be a busy, busy weekend between Saturday and November 8th, a busy week because we're taking our country back. Yes, we are. And by the way, one more thing. You see this flag here? We have had an unusual number of messages and emails from people in Great Britain. We're thinking about having a tonight in the United Kingdom or tonight in Great Britain. We don't know what we're going to do with the name yet. We're thinking of having that on another night. So we'll be busy Thursdays in Canada, Mondays in America, but we're thinking of doing this, folks. Now, why do I bring this up now? There are a group of people who need to be thanked for all of this that's going on with regard to spreading the news in relation to freedom and liberty. And that, folks, I'm going to show you something. Let me just step up a bit. Well, I don't have it here. But that group of people, yes, I do have it here. Stand by 1 minute. I want to show you something. Just hold on, folks, if I can find it. Okay, I got it. This is where, we've had protests in America and other countries around the world regarding freedom and liberty. But this, folks, this is where the movement began. This is where it began. And I will say that until my last breath. That is where it began. So God did have a plan, folks. He had a plan for people in a country, and it happened to be Canada, to do what they did, to work within the framework of the law, to show that the entire world that despite what the opposition tried to do to them, they didn't give up. And here in America, we have always had protests. We have always fought the good fight of faith. We have always supported people around the world. So you take what the Freedom Convoy in Canada did, and you take what the people of the United States have historically done with regard to protesting against injustice and for liberty and freedom. That is why this may be the third flag that you see behind me. Canada's here, Britain will be here, and hopefully Australia and other countries will add. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it great? You're part of history, for goodness sakes. You ought to be proud of yourselves. That's the good news. Thank you all for joining me tonight. See you tomorrow night, Thursday night. God bless you all. Have a great week. I am Lieutenant Stephen Rogers.
as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth. It was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.